Hello and welcome to a Friday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined today by Osceola editor Bob Ferrante. Bob, this is going to be a quick show today. We got a baseball game coming up here in about an hour and a half. Florida State hits the road to Notre Dame, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the show. But back here on Friday to talk a little bit about FSU spring practice number 5 was in the books yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about some of the prospects that were at practice yesterday on unofficial visits and what that means for their recruitment with Florida State. And obviously, probably the most exciting news is the fact that Florida State is going to scrimmage for the first time tomorrow, Saturday. And we heard Mike use some language that I don't think I've ever heard him say the term he used, but he said get after it. I don't think I've ever heard Mike say that. So we know it's going to be a physical scrimmage. But let's just talk a little bit about what Mike had to say post-practice yesterday, Bob. He mentioned they were in red zone for the first time for the spring, introducing some new play schemes down in that area of the field that they did not lose last year. So the implementation of Gus's offense and obviously Tony White's defense continues. But what were some of your takeaways from what Mike had to say after practice on Thursday?
Yeah, I think we'll hit on some of these, maybe more broadly, but maybe some consistent storylines. Like Amari Williams is impressing day after day. That's one that we're hearing a lot. Omar Graham had a good week. Tempo's been pushed. I think I asked Jabril Rawls, does the tempo look similar to last year? Norvell and Gus kind of blending that playbook. What is he seeing from a defensive back standpoint? To him, they're really pushing the tempo on offense, which is testing the defense. That's good to see. We're seeing some unfortunate injuries. That's the reality of football. We're going to not see Daniel Lyons. Caleb Lavalley will be out, and Jacob Rizzi will be out for the rest of the spring. So those are some bummers for those guys who need those reps in the spring. But it's the reality of football, unfortunately. But getting close to that first scrimmage on Saturday too.
Yeah, and it is particularly for Caleb Lavalley. It's disappointing that he will not partake in the spring. The other two guys are a little bit of known commodities, what they bring to the table. Caleb had not played a tremendous amount at North Carolina, started the bowl game for them, led them in tackles, which, kind of made a name for himself, announced himself in their bowl game up in Boston. But certainly a setback for him because that linebacker, from our perspective, we've always said that linebacker competition was going to be fairly much wide open with the integration of Elijah Herring and Stephon Thompson coming through the portal along with Caleb, and then really only having one proven linebacker coming back, Omar Graham Jr., Blake too. But Mike talked a lot about Omar today, and we'll talk a little bit, or yesterday we'll talk about that. But yeah, I think with Caleb, it's probably more of a setback because he's a younger player, needs reps in a new system. I think Jacob, we kind of know what he is. I think he is a depth piece for the Florida State offensive line. He's a smart kid. We heard Mike talk yesterday about keeping these guys interested in what's going on in practice, and that they're sitting there learning. He's certainly a guy that is a fast learner. Obviously, went to Harvard, and then Daniel Lyons. It's a shame because Daniel had his best year last year as a Seminole, but again, he's a kid that I think we know a little bit about. I think he's going to factor into the plans, and the good news is, based on what Mike said, is those guys are not going to be out long. This is a spring thing. It's not a summer, hey, we don't know if we're going to get back to the fall type of thing. So, I think, that's my take on what he said about the injuries. To your point, Amari Williams is a name that we're hearing a lot. It sounds like he has taken the defensive end like a duck takes to water, and I don't know that we'll see him much at tight end based on some of the things that we are hearing, because we have not heard anything about him at tight end, and we're going to talk a little bit about the tight end room here shortly. But yeah, we heard Amari's name multiple times, so certainly that has been a move that's worked out. And I was thinking about this before when I was writing up my notes for today's show, Bob. You almost hate that you had to burn a year of eligibility with him based just off what we're hearing for the first 5 days of spring. You almost wish that you did not have to burn a freshman year on a guy that was a year early in the Florida State's program, was still able to come in and compete and be a contributor on offense last year as a 1 year early freshman. So, hopefully maybe between now and the time he's here, if he doesn't turn out to be just a home run and end up here for 3 years in the NFL, hopefully they'll at some point the NCAA or whoever's going to run college football will say, hey, you got 5 years to play 5, and he'll get that extra year back. But it is a name that we are hearing a lot, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because as we've talked about, and we'll talk more about it next week when we go through the defensive depth chart at each position. I think he's one of the few defensive ends that has that jack build that if you looked at we've talked about that, you and I have talked about this before. If you looked at the Nebraska roster, we talked about Amari being the guy. Actually, so it's the second time we've talked about that. So you keep on hearing Deuce Robinson's name. We keep on seeing the videos of these great catches. I know Kurt's working on a feature on Deuce. We're not going to get into a whole lot about it. Other than Mike said that, listen, the question got asked kind of funny about Deuce, and I think they were talking about he put a ton of production last year at USC, which was not necessarily the case. He had about 23 catches. And he kind of – so Mike was quick to say, hey, he's not a finished product. This kid's still growing. But Kurt will have a feature on Deuce later today, early tomorrow. And obviously you'll have quotes from Mike. I think he might even have quotes from Deuce. But what do you make of the fact that, he mentioned Javon Boggs yesterday after practice, another early enrollee, true freshman, came regular graduating class, not as early like Amari was, but, sounds like Javon's already made an impression on Mike 5 practices in, because he said he will have what he said was he'll play a lot of football at Florida State. My interpretation of what he said in this coach speak thing we're having to go through now is that this kid's going to end up playing next year based on what they've seen so far.
I think my concern in the spring, Pat, is like it looks good through 5 practices. What happens when you're at practice 12, 13, 14, and 15, and you're kind of dragging because it's hot. The scrimmages and the bumps and the nicks and knacks kind of add up for those guys. How does a freshman respond? We've heard Javon Boggs quite a bit from Norvell, from some DBs too, who have mentioned his name. I think that's, you hate to say a guy's polished, but when he puts that kind of production out there, it's not a speed guy, but it's a guy who's super productive at just finding holes in defenses like Javon. I think with Deuce, to your point, Deuce was a yard after catch, a downfield target type to me. How does that fit with what Gus Malzahn wants to do as far as taking shots downfield, not to 6'6", but the ability to be physical, the ability to win those jump balls, to fight off the smaller DB. I think Deuce has that capability that, we wanted to see that last year from certain guys. We didn't see that. I think Florida State had a type this offseason, wanted to go bigger at wide receiver, wanted to find not just the Deuce at 6'6", but Jordan Scott. Hakeem's gotten a little bit more physical with his body as he's growing into it. So there's just a lot of different options there. Elijah Moore too. I think competition is really, really good at receiver again. It wasn't really good last year at all. And I think when you saw the drops, there wasn't enough leadership, wasn't enough, hey, you can't we're not going to tolerate that. that's not going to work. You're going to lose your job. I think the competition is going to sort that out this spring.
Yeah, and he mentioned Jalen Lucas a little bit yesterday as well. That's the second time he's mentioned him. Talk about how impressive he has been with him, or how impressive Jalen's been, and really coming back from the injury. Not so much maybe what he's doing at wide receiver in practice or running back wherever they're using him. But the real star of the day, based on the press conference, was Omar Graham Jr. And it sounds like. He is being motivated with the transfer addition of Stephon Thompson because in my projection, I have got both those guys at Mike linebacker in this defense. Omar really did. We've talked about this. He really came on towards the end of last year, seemed to find himself after struggling early, particularly in coverage. And listen, let's be honest, they weren't getting a whole lot of help from the guys up front in front of them. But it's kind of sounded like he is rejuvenated with this new 3-3-5 defense. Seems to be responding well to whatever they're teaching him out there. And John Pappy, just is still weird to say that he is the linebacker coach. But listen, he didn't say a lot about any of the other linebackers. He did by name. Now, he did mention Stephon Thompson, but he was really high on Omar. And so what do you take away from Mike's comments on Omar Graham?
I think Mike wanted to put Omar's past in perspective, and a lot of it is Omar dealt with a ton of injuries early on in his career, and I think we heard Adam Fuller say a lot of that early on too. That we invested a lot in Omar. Having him travel as a freshman, trying to put him, with the twos and maybe not on the scout team, trying to push him along, but then the injuries didn't allow a guy like Omar to really show who he was out there. I think my pause with Omar and the other linebackers, honestly, is I'm not sure if there's a really good guy when it comes to drop back into coverage.
Yeah.
I think they can move up. I think they can move side to side, again, with varying who's better in that area. The drop back and the coverage thing is probably not great, but maybe also if you're playing the 3-3-5, how much is that less of a concern? How much is it mitigated by the fact that you've got, say, a rover or a safety who can kind of bail you out schematically? That's kind of a big question to me, is just how it looks. But yeah, I think we feel better about this linebacker room for certain reasons. Elijah Herring, very productive, being from Tennessee and Memphis. We feel good about Stephon Thompson, who I think everybody has kind of said that's a teacher. As much as he is a linebacker and a player, we'll see how he looks like with all these injuries. But Stephon is the guy who's teaching the younger linebackers. He's teaching the Juice Criers. He's even teaching John Papuchas to some extent too. I think they're really sharing, okay, why'd you do this last year at Nebraska? Why did it work? So I think the education is a little bit of a two-way street there, because you've got a guy like Stephon who's at Syracuse, at Nebraska. Yeah. He knows this Tony White defense almost like he's a GA now, and maybe he'll be a coach down the road. We'll see.
Yeah, and listen, that's a great point. He can certainly help these linebackers. These kids spend time together off the practice field. I'm sure he's getting his brain picked a lot, and he's got experience as a starter at Syracuse, and obviously was a backup last year at Nebraska. But yeah, I think the thing that's going to be interesting, we talk about the lack of coverage skills. Now, Blake's pretty good in coverage. He's got the ability to run with slot receivers, tight ends. But, Florida State has basically played a two linebacker system. And, I wonder in a 3-3-5 defense, and this is something we won't know until we actually see them play or go back and study Nebraska film. When you do have your three linebacker based defense in there, in Adams' scheme, Omar was having to get out and cover the perimeter, get out in the flat in a 4-2-5 scheme. So it'll be interesting to see if they take some of that off his shoulders in man coverage in the 3-3-5, where he's going to line up in the middle of the field. Maybe he plays more zone. Maybe he picks up a crosser, tight end, running back, that kind of thing. But he doesn't have to run sideline to sideline, because that's, we both know that's not the strength of his game. So I just wonder if scheme will help him become a better player, because he's asked to do less in coverage. And we do know that he's got the ability to play against the run. He's a good downhill. He is your true old-fashioned Mike linebacker type. And I think that and Stefan, the competition and the knowledge should certainly help Omar. But, yeah, Mike really praised him a lot over the course of that interview, talked about Omar Graham probably more than he did anybody else. All right, well, that is our update on practice from this past Thursday. We do want to jump into some recruiting. Nick is on his way to the Miami's Rivals Elite Camp, so we will have coverage of that on Sunday. We have not decided whether they're going to do a live thread or Nick's just going to do a board post after it's all done, but you can look for Nick to have coverage along with Fish. They will both be down in Miami this week for the Miami Elite Rivals Camp, and it's one of the reasons we don't think there's going to be a ton of big-name prospects at practice tomorrow. We've already talked to Nick on his way down to Miami today, and he covered recruiting for us yesterday as far as who was there. And he said they're not expecting a ton of kids this weekend. So we'll see. At least that was the hubbub between him and the boys at 247 and on 3. So we'll see how that plays out. But we do have 4 articles at theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. You can go there and get our practice notes. You can get our injury report, which we've already talked about. We've done practice report. We've done injury updates. So now we're on to recruiting. But if you've missed the show and you're just joining us, you can obviously go back and catch up our notes from yesterday's practice. But, we got 4 articles at theosceola.com on these 4 kids. So I'm just going to kind of go through. We said it's going to be a fast Friday show. Bob's got baseball coverage, so we're going to try to get him out of here to grab a snack and get cozy and get ready for that baseball game in Notre Dame. But there were probably a dozen kids out there yesterday, but we talked with at least 4 of them. I'm going to start with Dayron Parks. He is an offensive tackle, 4-star offensive tackle from Sarasota Cardinal Mooney. He had not been on campus in almost 2 years. 2023 is the last time he said he'd been on campus. And he's back on campus today, and he did tell Nick yesterday that how this visit goes will ultimately impact whether Florida State gets an official visit, which he has not set with them, and who they are competing with are Ohio State, Miami, Auburn, and Kentucky. I think he's got officials and Penn State. I think he's got officials to Penn State, Auburn, and Kentucky right now. Ohio State, he says, making a big push along with Florida State. The good news for Florida State is his relationship with Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn goes back to a year and a half. They had offered him at UCF. He's very familiar with them. He mentioned them both by name in his interview with Nick. So if you want to learn more about Dayron Parks, go to theosceola.com and check that article. I actually wrote that one. Nick did the interview, so I only did half the work, but and probably not the most important work. Nick did the hard work. He did the dirty work. And the next guy we're going to talk about, Bob. This is kind of this. I was shocked when I saw he was at practice, and that is 4-star wide receiver and former FSU commit Devin Carter, who is the son of FSU legend Dexter Carter, and Dexter was at practice too. I saw a picture of him, and this one's been interesting. There seems to be a lot of drama in this recruitment. It's about the best, nicest way I can put it. But anyway, he is from Douglas County, Georgia. If you don't know who Devin is, he's a 4-star slot receiver. He's committed to Florida State committed to Florida State during his freshman year before he played much football, to be quite honest. And then decommitted from them or from Florida State and committed to Auburn last January. He said he wanted to meet the new staff. And he right now only has an official visit set up to Auburn. So another kid whose visit's going to be contingent on whether Florida State gets an official visit. And right now he says he thinks that that'll be June 6th. He's also going to likely set an official visit to Ole Miss. How do you read the tea leaves? He wanted to come in. He was excited about the energy of the new staff. I think this is going to be one of those. Is it really worth the time? I mean, because he's been committed to you once, decommitted. It seems like he kind of cut off the communication. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seemed like he kind of just cut off the communication. And of course, now Gus is back. The family does have a relationship with Malzahn because they offered his brother out of high school. His brother, who ended up at Georgia Southern, I think was recruited by Gus at Auburn, might have been at UCF, ultimately did not end up there. But how do you read the Devin Carter thing? I mean, I don't know. I was shocked. Like I said, I was shocked he was here after the commitment to Auburn, and the fact that he had not. This is his first time he's been on campus since he committed to Auburn.
Yeah, the percentages are pretty low, right? If there is a commitment, decommits, commits somewhere else, how do you get that guy back? I think the big positive is like what you said: relationship with Tim Harris Jr., relationship with Gus Malzahn. The family knows Gus. I think schematically what you're going to get out of Gus. How much of what he saw as a prospect is, in Devin. He didn't see that kind of prolific offense that was going to develop him for the next level. I think, if you're Dexter, you have to say, well, I'd love to see you go to Florida State, but this is your decision. I think we've seen this a lot with these dads we've seen a lot of legacy prospects all of a sudden, Deuce Robinson, Ionata. There's a lot of guys making decisions, and clearly you're happy if somebody picks Florida State, but it has to be that fit. It has to be where you feel like you're going to develop. I don't have a great feel for, let's say, where the wide receiver board is going to end up. This is another out-of-state prospect. Florida State's done well in Georgia, but right now you've done great in 2026 in Florida. This feels like a really tough one, maybe a long shot, but I do like that Mike Norvell and the staff are saying, okay, let's push for an official visit. Let's see how it comes out.
Yeah, listen, he was impressed, and you can read all the comments he gave Nick at theosceola.com. But Devin Carter back on campus yesterday, and listen, his father played here. I think that probably helps. It certainly does not hurt. Dexter is a proud former Florida State player, and so that can't hurt. If Florida State really does indeed say, "Hey, we're going to jump all in on Devin Carter, and we want to get you here," Dexter will certainly be an ally for Mike. But he had a tremendous amount of stuff, positive things to say. Like I said, you could go read Nick's article on Devin at theosceola.com. Some very definitive news. Now, the first two guys don't even know they're going to get an official visit, but they are big-time prospects. But four-star safety from Sarasota Booker High School, Chauncey Chuck Kinnan, was in town yesterday. He told us that this is obviously FSU's been one of his top schools. He's had an OV scheduled with Florida State for some time. He will be here June 13th for his official visit. Probably the big thing coming out of that was the fact that he said FSU is one of his top three schools out of the four schools that he currently has official visits set up with, which are Auburn, Georgia, LSU, and Florida State. I believe he's going to Auburn, Georgia, and LSU in that order. I'm not sure where Florida State factor. They pop in and out there somewhere, but he is. Those are the four visits he has set up, and Florida State is in the top three. And again, you can read what he had to say at theosceola.com. And then the Nebraska connection continues, man. I mean, they got whatever. Our boy Chase, once he decided to come to Florida State, he started to bring most of Lincoln with him. Lincoln in Omaha. He had a high school teammate here, three-star tight end, Isaac Jensen, from Millard South High School. Bob, I know you transcribed and wrote that. Listen, the big note coming out of that is he's got a teammate here that can let it, that I think that will help Florida State's chances with dragging him halfway across the country, if that's what happens. I mean, that's you fly over a lot of good programs to get here from Omaha. But he does have Chase here. They were teammates. He obviously likes the way Florida State uses their tight ends. We heard him talk about that. But what were some of your takeaways from when you listened to him talk, Bob? And he's just now really starting to get out and make some unofficial visits.
I mean, he's using his spring break to get serious, right? I mean, Tallahassee, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, already, showing Missouri and Nebraska have some OVs lined up in June. He liked the welcome. The welcome mat was out with the coaches, at Moore already for him and the family. I think, again, going back to relationships, Chris Thompson's done a good job here, just kind of building that relationship long distance. But now it was that time to be face to face, to watch a practice, to see how the tight ends are used, not just by Chris, but in the offense. So I think just using the practices again to further strengthen the message of what Florida State can do for these guys. But hey, he's spending a lot of time, family spending a lot of money to travel around to all these different campuses to figure out what's in play. And yeah, he's somebody who's getting down to that list of finalists, he said, in the next couple of weeks. So looks like Florida State will get an OV, but to be determined there. All right, we may have lost Pat here for a second. I'm going to go take a quick commercial break. We'll try and get Pat back in here.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. We're trying to get this. Listen, if you've joined us the last couple of shows, we have run into a technical glitch kind of in the middle of the show. The last 3 shows, we are taking some actions to make sure that doesn't happen. We'll have more news on that next week. But anyway, so we apologize for that. But yes, so we're finishing up on Isaac Jensen, 3-star tight end, and he's got officials set up with Missouri and Nebraska. He's also got Notre Dame. He's actually en route or at Texas A&M today, and then he's going to Notre Dame, I believe, tomorrow, Bob. So Florida State still has not locked in an official visit yet, so that would be the next step. But what do you think after listening to him talk? What do you think Florida State's chances of getting that official visit in are?
Yeah, I think the OV is almost a near certainty. I think it's a question of which weekend would Florida State like to have him in, and then which weekend does he have that opening. But I think as he's making these decisions, he's looking at some big time programs, including Nebraska, which is home. Does he take the path that Chase Lofton took, or does he prefer, maybe somewhere back closer to home or Notre Dame?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I think these 3 visits are obviously. I think what we're seeing a lot of kids start to do, Bob, is use this unofficial, this January through April window before they start their own spring practice. I think we're starting to see that used as, hey, unofficial visits, or I'm going to use those to determine who I'm going to go see. And listen, when you see someone where these kids are going, and I'm not relating this to Isaac Jensen, so I want to make sure that's clear. Sometimes I wonder who's paying for these unofficial visits as much as these kids are getting around. And I'm not referring to Florida State. I'm not referring to. I'm just saying that. And we've heard some outrageous numbers for kids to go on official visits. There was a school in the West Coast we heard last year was offering $10,000 for kids to come over and visit their school. I don't know that that's going on. I'm just telling you what we were hearing from people that are got their ear to the ground. So anyway, but these kids do get around a lot, and it's almost like this unofficial visit tour that these kids are taking has become the new norm, and they're all going on extensive trips and spending a day or 2 here. I mean, how many guys have we already seen since January, Bob, that have started taking 2-day unofficial visits? That 10 years ago, that was very unheard of. And I don't remember any time in my 7 seasons at USF or my 3 seasons at South Carolina that we ever had a kid on an unofficial visit for multiple days. And you're starting to see that become the norm. So we continue to see changes in how the recruiting calendar and recruiting processes are playing out. But yeah, so those are our recruiting updates for today. Again, you can go to theosceola.com for articles on Dayron Parks, Devin Carter, Chauncey Kennan, and Isaac Jensen. They're already up. They're on the site. I think they're all in front of the paywall, so you can access them whether you're a subscriber to the Osceola or not. But, hey, if you like the articles and like what the kids say and like the questions that we ask, go ahead and subscribe. We're not going to stop you. So go ahead and do that. But right now, what we are going to do so we can pay the bills is we're going to take a quick 51-second timeout, and we'll be right back to talk a little Notre Dame FSU baseball. We'll be right back if I can find the graphic. Producing and hosting your own show sometimes a challenge, folks. I'm not going to lie. Here we go.
Hey, Seminole fans! Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined by Bob Ferrante for our Friday edition of Seminole Sidelines. It's going to be a little bit quicker show. We're trying to get Bob to the Notre Dame baseball game. Not really physically get him there, but make sure he's got enough time to grab a Coke and some peanuts and popcorn and get ready for the game. Bob, I did leave one talking point off our first end of our show, but we can add it because it's going to be a quick one. Obviously, one of the things that we have been doing since spring practice started is going position by position to talk a little bit about what the roster looks like for 2025. And we're going to go through basically what is the smallest position room on offense, and that is the tight end room. And obviously, we've talked a little bit about some of the Chase Lofton earlier in the week. Mike had said that he has really found a place there. But just look at that room. It's almost brand new. Except for Landon Thomas, it is brand new. Kyle Morlock is gone due to graduation. Brian Courtney transferred to Tennessee Tech. Jackson West transferred to Western Kentucky. And Jarrell Powers transferred to Stephen F. Austin. So this is another room that's got a full makeover, Bob. And they welcome back the Biscuit, Marquiston Douglas, who I understand does not like to be called Biscuit. And I'm not going to upset him, so I'm going to go back to Marquiston. It's not as fun to me, but anyway, Marquiston's back from Arizona State. You get Randy Pittman, another UCF transfer in from obviously UCF, and he had been a Florida State commit early in his recruiting process. He is from Panama City, Florida. You get Chase Lofton in here. Landon Thomas is back, and obviously you have the option of bringing Amari Williams over, which I just think they're going to find him too valuable on defense to risk that, particularly if they can feel like these four guys can play. And based off what we have heard Mike say, the guy you had the biggest question on being able to play was Chase Lofton. But what are your thoughts on what looks to be an improving room? We've heard Mike talk that he thinks Marquiston has probably had his best 4 or 5 day period at Florida State over his now 2 different stints. It's so hard to even comprehend that this in this era of mass annual free agency, semester free agency, that we're talking about a kid that went away for a year and came right back. And but we've seen that with now I believe this is the second or third kid that's transferred back to Florida State. We saw it with the DB. I cannot remember the DB's name, but
Amari Cooper, right?
Yeah, Duke Cooper. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on the revamped room? Obviously, Chris Thompson is back as the tight ends coach, but he's got a whole new group of guys to work with outside of Landon Thomas.
I think this room is about familiarity with the new guys, but also addition by subtraction, because you just had to, say to a couple of guys, you're just not going to be in the plans. And that's tough for Brian Courtney and Jarrell Powers, Jackson West, and all those guys. We thought highly of Jackson as a prospect, right? It just didn't really work out here at Florida State. But I think the great thing, we'll call him the flying biscuit maybe. How about Marquiston as a red zone option in this offense? I think that's something that I'm intrigued by, that kind of physicality and that basketball type body control that I think to go up for the rebound, if you want the analogy there, right?
Yeah.
Randy Pittman, who probably didn't grade all that well, I don't think, as a blocker at UCF, but as far as understanding the offense, the Gus Malzahn scheme, that's a huge plus. As far as being a teacher in the room, similar to a Stephon Thompson, I think that's pretty big to have a Randy Pittman. I think just his jump from year 1 to year 2 at UCF kind of excites you. You don't want to try and replicate those numbers on paper, but you know what he's capable of putting out there as far as just being a consistently productive option. Landon Thomas, the big question was just put on more weight, be a better blocker, show that you can do both. And when you're on the field, you're capable of doing both. So the defense has to respect it. The last thing on Chase is I'm really surprised because I thought Chase was going to be a flexed out receiver, almost like Amari was last year, just because Chase, from a body standpoint, he looks like a taller receiver. Great footwork, great hands. You watch his clips. Again, they're just clips, not full games. But you watch those clips, great hands, great footwork. Feels like a guy who should be out there, should be getting a chance. But this is a tough depth chart. I mean, it's a really, really good depth chart. I feel like Florida State didn't have this at all last year to start off, what camp or preseason, spring or preseason. So to have this kind of depth chart at tight end is really a remarkable hit the upgrade button and then go.
Yeah, listen, we knew that this room was going to be an issue last year. We talked about it in our preseason preview that, listen, it's just you don't have a all-around tight end in that group, and it showed itself because, you end up having Kyle Morlark, seems like a great kid, but just did not have a very good season at all. Dropped some very catchable passes. He was supposed to be, hand friendly when he first got here, so you hate to see him end his career that way. And after that, it was a big slide off, which is the reason we started seeing Landon Thomas play and Amari Williams play and burning that year of eligibility that was so important, which I wish that they could get back. That had to be a hard decision for Mike and Chris Thompson to make last year. Hey, we got to try to win a football game. These guys aren't ready, but we got to play them. But we saw very good things out of both Landon and Amari. And listen, I think Amari might be a special package guy from time to time, but again, we've already talked about on the front end of the show. I think he's really starting to thrive at that defensive end based on what the things that Mike has had to say. But I do think the room is better in this way. You've got two guys that now have bodies that you can line up as in-unit tight ends that can block in the run game, and that's Landon, who's listed at 6'4", 235. You might be able to put another 10 pounds on him over the summer, get him up to 245, make him an all-around tight end or all-purpose tight end, which is what they did not have last year. Marqueson certainly at 6'5", 275. You think, and Mike has said he's playing really well right now. You would hope that he would be a dominant blocker at tight end and allow you to have the in-unit guy. And then I agree with you with Pittman and lesser extent Chase. I think those guys are going to be used. If they're used as an in-unit tight end, I think they'll be used on the backside as cutoff blockers. I don't think you'll put them at the point of attack very much. I think they're more pass catchers right now. Now, obviously, Randy's older. He's a junior. He's not huge. He's not a huge kid. He's listed at 6'2", 225. So he is more of that Jaheim Bell type, I guess, for lack of a better term. He's more of a pass catcher, better with the ball. He was highly productive for Gus last year at UCF. I think he might have been their leading receiver on the whole team, if I'm not mistaken. If he wasn't, he was not. He was first or second. And obviously he's familiar with the scheme. And then I think Chase, I think you're right. I mean, you watch his film as a high school prospect, and he was definitely a kid that lined up more at receiver than he did at tight end. He was a willing blocker when he had to block or was asked to block. And so I do think that it'll be important for him through this summer to add as much good weight as he can, and maybe more importantly, strength than weight. But listen, I think they got a chance to be a better room. Now, this is the one position group, Bob, I could see them saying, hey, on April 16th, let's see who's in the portal and see if we might be able to get another tight end that can come in and contribute. Because, listen, if Chase is as good as what we're hearing, you'd almost not like to play him, right? Give him a season to develop. Now, at 215. Now maybe they get him big enough to where he could be a serviceable blocker, but I think he's got ways to go there just based on his size. But do you agree that you might see Florida State go to the portal for a tight end?
I'd be tempted, especially if I could grab a multi-year guy, somebody with multiple years of eligibility. I kind of look at Chase as a wide receiver at this point in his career. That's what he is. Now, if you need him as a receiver and it works out because other guys are just not working or injury or whatnot, then maybe he can be a slot receiver. I just don't see him in the mix at tight end given this depth chart.
Yeah.
I think, Pat, to your question though, what are your resources from a rev share NIL? What are your priorities? Is tight end a priority? Do you have other injuries? We've seen some injuries at DB. Do you decide, you got to go out and get a DB because you got to plug somebody in there? I'll be curious what happens with this spring portal. It's usually more departure than arrival in the end, but Florida State will have to do some evaluation, whether that's tight end, DB, some other spots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out on the other end, that other side of that thing too. Does anybody leave? And I think, Kurt and I were talking the other day. I think they're over the 105 if you count the freshmen that haven't arrived on campus. So there's still some adjustments to do that way. And then, of course, I'm still not sure how the scholarship reduction, the penalty they took for Alex Atkins, where they are on that. They've never really said that they play 80 last year on scholarship as opposed to 85 and take the hit in 1 year. They spread it out, 83, 82, 84, 81, all the ways you could get there. So, but yeah, I think they could certainly add a tight end there. So we have worked our way through the Florida State offense. So if you want to go back, you can listen to all five preview shows. The last 5 Seminole Sidelines will have position group previews. Mark Salva and I started with the quarterbacks last Friday, I believe, or maybe the Wednesday. But anyway, so then we went to the offensive line with Mark on Friday. So it was last Wednesday was quarterback. So we've been through the whole offensive line. All right, Bob, I started to get you off out of here before 4, and it's 3:42. So let's dive right into baseball. The number 4 ranked Florida State Seminoles, 21-3 and 5-1 in the ACC, are at Notre Dame today, and it's going to be Notre Dame is 13-9 and 1-8 in the ACC. They have fallen off since old Link left. I believe this is his first return trip back to South Bend as Florida State's head coach. So, what do we need to know about baseball? I think what everybody wants to know is Jamie Arnold going to rebound because he's pitching today at 4:30.
Yeah, I think the rhythm for Jamie Arnold will be back. This is kind of his Friday groove. Florida State's going to be out of that Thursday, Friday, Saturday business of TV because of the games down at Coral Gables. So we'll see Jamie Arnold back in that Friday role. I think we'll see him settle in, very nicely. I'll be curious, how it looks, how sharp he is after really probably the worst start since 2023 when he was a freshman and was still erratic. I think the interesting storylines to me for this Florida State Notre Dame series, they've been on the road a ton. Coral Gables, Jacksonville to play Florida, emotional Tuesday game. Then you're making the long trip, Chicago, South Bend. How does the road impact the body? Yep. Can you bring your own juice? Because Notre Dame has no real fan juice, especially nothing compared to what you saw Miami and then the 10,000 plus in Jacksonville. It's a totally different atmosphere. I think somebody also mentioned totally different field. It's mostly turf. So I don't know, is it all turf? I can't recall exactly, but different style of game, different kind of feel, just as far as how you play the ground balls and how you play the outfield, right? So I think those are some kind of big picture storylines to look into. But I honestly, Notre Dame's got some decent wins. They've beaten North Florida. They did take a game at Clemson, lost that series, but really swept by Wake. And Notre Dame, the staff ERA is 5.77. It's not good. We're not going to say this is a sweep for Florida State, but it's starting to add up like this could be for Florida State to be in that position to at least take 2 out of 3. We think that's what this pitching staff is capable of every weekend. And if not, take 2 out of 3, go for that sweep and potentially, take care of business on this long road trip. But the other wild card now, just happening since we got on the show, doubleheader on Saturday because of that Sunday weather. Doubleheaders are just tough on your pitching staff. It makes it really, really challenging. So if Florida State can make one of those a 7-inning game on Saturday, then kind of shorten it just enough to take that pressure off your pitching staff, I think that helps. But just a lot of different things that are unusual going to be thrown at Florida State, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, and they have Valloni. Am I saying the name right? Valloni?
Joey Vallini, yes.
Yeah. So he's going to pitch the first game, or scheduled to pitch the first game on Saturday, and then originally scheduled to pitch on Sunday was Wes Mendez. I'm assuming that'll stay the same. Listen, Lulu's going to get a workout, man. 2 games in 1 day. He doesn't have a sidekick. He's going to be talking himself to death. I'm sure they're taking him. I think they take him everywhere anymore, don't they? I think that's almost turned into a full.
Hey, if you guys haven't watched it, go out on Twitter, Facebook, wherever. His call Tuesday night was incredible. Just the raw emotion of him, calling that 9th inning and the home run. Chip Baker put the video out there on Twitter. It was incredible to watch it and then kind of see Lulu's reaction in real time. But yeah, Lulu had to rest that voice for a couple of days before he went up to South Bend.
Yeah, well, he's been on just about every show possible. I saw him do something with Cole Hain on Twitter today, and I think he's been on somebody else's pod, but we need to get him on next week and talk to him once he's had a little time to recover, because he's had a busy week. But yeah, that was a great call, and I watched a little of the clip between he and Cole Hain. Didn't watch the whole thing, but we do need to get him on the show. That would be interesting to hear what he has to say, not only about that game, but about the season, and about some of these young guys that are killing it right now for Florida State, Miles Bailey and all those. But we'll have him on at some point. But yeah, so we'll have full coverage. Bob's going to do a live thread starting at first. Probably already got the thread up on the board. So if you want to follow Bob's live thread of the baseball action, which you can watch on ACC Extra, while Bob is watching, you can watch along with Bob, and I will probably have my computer on as well. But that starts at 4:30, first pitch at 4:30, and you can go to theosceola.com, and that thread is for subscribers. So please subscribe and follow Bob and Kurt as they update what's going on with the baseball Knowles in South Bend. We're going to wrap it up here for a second, but I do have a couple of random questions for you, Bob, just to work in some what do they call it, pop culture into the show. So yesterday I got notification that the Righteous Gemstones were now available on Max, which I get through Amazon Prime. Well, the first couple of weeks it was not available on Prime. They were trying to, they're trying to get you to go straight to Max and buy another subscription. But anyway, so it's last couple of days I've been trying to keep up. Do you watch the Righteous Gemstones? Have you?
I have not. I'm just finishing Reacher, and Bosch is coming up on Amazon Prime, so I'm looking forward to Bosch. But I have heard.
Have you not seen Bosch yet?
I have watched every season of Bosch, and I'm looking forward. This is the final season that's coming up right now.
Okay, so you're doing Bosch Legacy right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I love Bosch, the 4 or 5 year show. That was our 4. Yeah, 4. Yeah, that was pretty good. No, Righteous Gemstone. I don't know if you know let's say about. John Goodman, the crazy guy from Kenny from Eastbound and Down. I should have written his name down, but he's the guy, Danny McBride. And it's got several actors that you will know. Anyway, it's crazy. Anyway, see, the first 3 seasons were great. I've kind of been a little bit disappointed. I get Bradley Cooper to come in as the basically the first gemstone. The story about how the Gemstones got into religion and how they ended up starting their own church. And so anyway, but I have not been as impressed with season 4 of Gemstones as I thought it would be. So just want to work a little pop culture. And I do have another thing to ask you, because there's been this fascinating thing going on between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James here of late. It's almost like the lines between the media and players are getting blurred. This is not. I don't know if I've ever seen a player attack members of the media like he's attacked Stephen A. Smith and Brian Windhorst, which has been weird. And then, you get Stephen A. Smith saying, well, if he had laid a hand on me, I would have laid him out. I don't know how true that is. I don't know. I don't think I would have a shot against LeBron. I'm pretty sure if I don't, Stephen A. doesn't. Stephen's smaller than I am. But yeah. So anyway, have you watched any of that? What do you make of all that? I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Honestly, if you're ESPN, is this good business because it's ratings, or is it bad business because you're the rights holder of the NBA and LeBron, who's like the godfather of the league these last few decades, is going at it with Stephen A. Smith? I don't get this. I do think for decades, maybe this happened beyond, behind closed doors with media and athletes. Like, athletes would maybe say something crazy, but they would know that it was almost off the record and it would never get out there. It would never get printed, let alone thought. Well, social media was not even a thought for a lot of these athletes going back years and years. I don't understand why it's been allowed to escalate. I think ESPN probably should have stepped in at some point and said, guys, this just doesn't work for us whatsoever.
Well, probably because people like me are sitting here talking about it, and it brings attention. And listen, I didn't watch all of LeBron's thing on McAfee. I just saw bits and pieces, but anyway, it was kind of interesting. Hey, by the way, Kenny Dillingham, I always thought Kenny talked a lot while he was here, and it kind of, for a young guy preaching about how programs are built and all that, I understand that he was just, getting his jargon down, his stump speech and all those things, and preparing to be a head coach, which he's turned out to be a good one. But he's my favorite coach today because I pulled him up on Twitter to see what he's been talking about. And sure enough, he is not only opening practice to the media, he is opening practice to the public on Saturday because he wants players to know that if they come to practice and they screw up and don't bring their best game, it's going to go out on social media. And it's his way of trying not to let his program, his players, find complacency coming off a surprisingly great year that found them in the playoff this past season. And so he is worried about complacency. So he has decided to open up his practice not only to the media, but to the general public, expecting a couple of thousand fans to show up at Sun Devil Stadium and all eyes. And I think it's kind of a novel idea. And particularly, listen, this is we're in a different era of college football. And as you and I well know, and everybody that watches this show and listens to this show, pros practice in front of the public all the time and in front of the media all the time. And I think that what we're doing here in Tallahassee is a little bit too overboard, not to let the media in, not to let fans in. I mean, you're not hiding anything. This has never made sense to me. But I think Kenny Dillingham, again, just like he does in his press conference, he's ahead of the game in NIL when he goes in and say, hey, if you want to keep in the middle of the season, if you want to keep Sam Levitt as a Sun Devil, we need businesses and Arizona to buy into our NIL program here at Arizona State. And I think he's on the cutting edge with the spring practice stuff. And it is a way to motivate your players if they know they get. Now, I'm not saying you open up all practices. I'm not. But scrimmages in particular, which they're going to do, even a situational, and I'm sure some of it will be practice / scrimmage. But anyway, I thought that was a unique way of motivating his kids, and I think it also try to give them a little juice, knowing that they're going to practice in front of people. And spring practice there is usually, now I'm going back to my own experience, usually a lot of physicality and hitting, and you do get beat down a little bit in spring. So I think that's a great way to motivate his kids, but he's my coach of the day for that.
This does happen at a lot of schools, I think, including Florida State basketball in past years. But really, if you are a booster, donor to a coaches club, NIL collective, you should have an open practice. You should have an extra perk that allows you to watch a game or watch a game, watch a scrimmage, watch a practice, have an opportunity to meet and greet with the players afterwards, maybe autographs if there's a couple players who are available. I think that would engage the fan base. And I don't mean this as a criticism like Norvell. It's just, if you want to grow the sport, if you want to grow your NIL, your booster donor base, to your point, Pat, this feels like good business. It feels like good business to connect with the community, to have little kids, little boys and girls have the chance to go out and watch these athletes practice too. And then they will know, hey, when I go out at the elementary school, I got to practice too. I think it kind of starts that whole chain.
Well, yeah, I kind of like the way he's approached it. I think it's a different way of motivating your kids. I think it's probably and maybe you bring somebody that's just moved to Phoenix or Tempe, Arizona, walks into the practice, really doesn't have a team, but loves football. Maybe gets him involved in your booster program or NIL program, sell another season ticket, whatever the case may be. I think it's really smart of Kenny, and he's becoming he's either becoming smarter as he gets older, or I'm not. One of the two, because I've really been impressed with what some of the things he has done over the last year and a half, whether it's been NIL or this. I think he's kind of he's always been a smart guy, but I think he's kind of on the cutting edge or trying to be on the cutting edge. And then, of course, in case you want to know, folks, this is breaking news earlier today. Deion Sanders signed a contract extension at Colorado that will keep him at Colorado through 2029. And talk about guys that are on the cutting edge. I do like Deion's idea, and I've heard Mike Gundy echo it now, about spring games against another college. Now, I would like to see them go to FCS colleges and bring those guys in and not wait and then factor FCS games out of the fall schedules moving forward. Pay those guys to come in and play in the spring. And then, of course, Mike Gundy wants to see he wants to scrimmage Oklahoma, but he wants to do it thud, not tackle. I'm not sure how that will sell. But his idea was, hey, charge everybody $25 to come watch a thud scrimmage, and we'll go to Oklahoma one week. They come to us the next. We'll do 2 thud scrimmages, no tackling. And Deion's been on the cutting edge of that too, because he and Fran Brown have been talking about, hey, wouldn't it be great if Syracuse and Colorado could get together for a spring scrimmage. I think we'll end up seeing that as, again, the sport becomes more professional. I think we'll see some of these things become standard practice. But anyway, all right. Well, listen, it's almost 4 o'clock, Bob. We're going to fit it in under an hour. We're at 56:30 right now. We got a little pop culture. We got a little education and baseball. Now, listen, I know if you've been watching this, I know it says basketball updates. We were going to have former FSU player Andrew Rutledge is on today. He is a lobbyist, but he was a teammate of Luke Laux. And we're going to have him on just to tell us a little bit about Luke as a player, his personality, who he is as a person, and not so much the X's and O's and what his plans are for Florida State basketball, and get a few anecdotal stories from Andrew and Luke back in their days as teammates at Florida State back in the early 2010s. But Bob, we appreciate you joining me today. If you're watching and you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com and check us out. We've got a ton of post-practice reports, recruiting coverage. Please check it out. If you like us, we ask you that you subscribe to the Osceola. It's $99 a year. Or $6.99 a month, and I think we might have a special going on right now that will be listed
Osceola
at the bottom
30.
of go
Osceola
ahead,
30 days free. Yep.
Yeah, so you can use it. It's got a promotion code that you use when you go to subscribe, and you'll get your first 30 days free. And there's a ton of stuff going on right now between football, baseball, softball, golf, basketball with the portal. They're very active in the portal right now. We'll get you caught up on that next week. But we hope to have Luke on, but I will have Bob and Kurt on next week to talk about basketball more at length, because there are a lot of updates. I know a lot of people are interested in what Luke's been doing since he got on campus. So we'll be back next Monday at 3, Wednesday at 3, and Friday at 3. We will have a recruiting recap from Nick's trip to Rivals Camp in Miami. Nick and I were talking about it on the way down. We're not sure if we're going to do that, if he's going to pull over on his way back and do that live from the road on Monday, or we may do a full recruiting show on Wednesday. But we will have a full report from Nick and potentially from Fish on what they saw at Miami at the Rivals Camp. If you're not a subscriber to the Osceola YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button so that you get alerted as to when we're going to do our shows, whether they're live or taped. It'll set up in YouTube and it'll send you a notification. So we'd appreciate it if you do that. We hope everyone has a great weekend, and we hope we have great things to report from South Bend and from the practice field after Florida State's first scrimmage on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. We appreciate it.